Welcome, everyone. I have the honor of representing the acting CEO. I'm standing here on his behalf, so yeah, where he is, I'm sure someone will tell him what I said. You know, today, ladies and gentlemen, is a very auspicious event. It's auspicious, being an African, that we have the founders of NETFA. Now, in my culture, we respect the elderly. And this morning, Chris kept talking about all the old, his words, all the old white men who are in the room. But it's an auspicious day because we're starting on a new journey, and we're starting by going back to the origins of this wonderful facility we have, which is NETFA. But it's also important to note that the conversation today is actually about the infrastructure conundrum which faces the country. I'm sure we've all seen the statistics which talk about the civil, especially in the civil engineering space, the lack of investment in infrastructure. But you sit with a slight conundrum with infrastructure, is that what do you do? Do you invest in the hopes of an industry catching up with you at some point? Or do you wait for industry to be mature and developed before you make the investment? Now, some countries, that's an easy question, countries like China. China, you can go now to what were rural areas a few years back and find the most modern cities that rival anything you've ever seen in the world, which are all empty, waiting for the economies to catch up. But they plan 30, 50 years ahead, and so they have that advantage. I was just thinking this morning that 12 years ago, the SABS was still a regulator, and in 12 years' time, we're going to be in 2030, which is where the NDP wants to put us, in that we were supposed to have created a certain number of jobs by then, millions of jobs. And at this point in time, as we stand, it's 12 years to go, and what will the decisions of today yield in 12 years' time? But for most people, timescales like that are very difficult to deal with because we're very much about the now and our immediate needs. And I do think we need to introduce a shift in mindset. 3 years is too short. Right now, when we plan our corporate plan, it's a 3-year time scale. That is really inadequate when you've got to look at the longer term of where do we want to be as a country in 12 years' time. And for me, 12 years is just significant because it takes us to 2030. And those are the questions that we need to be asking. So the choice of Dr. Erickson as our keynote speaker, yes, linked to NETFA, but also ends up being the exact right conversation we do need to be having. What is happening internationally in the electricity space? What is happening that we should be looking at? Where should we be going? Rather than continuing, I think, our inward focus, which only looks at ourselves as we are right now. We have conversation about the fourth industrial revolution, but is the reality of that really vesting within each of us in our spaces? And this is not something that I'm throwing out only to industry, it's actually to us at the SABS as well, is that if we are to still be relevant in the next 12 years, what steps do we need to be taking right now in order to ensure that 12 years from now, in 2030, the infrastructure we have, even if it's starting to show its age, is still relevant, and the plans are there to continue relevance and alignment with what industry has. And that, for me, is one of the most important considerations that we all need to be taking, is that where do we want to go? We know where we are, but really, where is it that we want to see ourselves as an industry as well? Is that, what are the plans? It can't be that we are all going to be looking at the quarterly reports that of financial reports, because there's also that obsession of short-term planning, which is about short-term returns to investors. We do need to start looking a little bit deeper as a country to say, in 12 years' time, will we still be sitting in a situation where 60% of our economy is made up of imports? What role are we going to be playing to ensure that that has tipped and we start clawing back some of our own manufacturing. Our manufacturing has been decimated, but what decisions do we make now? What actions do we put into place now which take us to a future which looks markedly different from what is happening now? Everybody knows the economic statistics about the country. Our growth rate is barely 2%, and we probably are in a recession, even though nobody will say so. What does that mean for us in being able to then make the investments that we need to be making to take us forward? So today, we actually are not going to be saying a lot about the SABS, because it's about us reaching out to industry and getting some kind of alignment to say, is there possibilities of how do we actually manage this very real conundrum of major infrastructure investments that are required with balancing against a fiscal environment where there's no money in the Treasury is not going to be giving us money to make those investments. We need to be making the business cases which bring the money in. The investment summits that the president talks about, what collaborations do we need to be having to be at those summits to ensure that we get investment which meets our needs and our aims? So that as much as everybody complains about the new colonialism, sometimes you also need to be smart and know how to play the game. And if we keep ourselves out of the conversations that are actually happening, that shape the fundamentals of this country, then in 12 years' time, we will be out of the park, because probably the environment will change even more and there will be more imports and less manufacturing than there already is. So for me, ladies and gentlemen, without taking too much time, because I think there are people who are eminently qualified to speak about these issues who will be here. In summary and in closing, it's that really, thank you for your time, which is very valuable, that you're spending with us. And this was not done lightly. It's been a difficult road getting here, but we are here. And I think it's the start of many more where you will see more visibility of us as the SABS. And with us today are other executives as well as our management staff who are here to really engage and listen, not to run away from our shortcomings, but to actually be able to have the brave conversations which point to where we need to fix things. I do think it's important that no false expectations are created. We are sitting with a very real problem of the resources to be able to make adequate investment, not only in physical infrastructure, but in also in capacitating and capacity building, to be able to have the staff and who are adequately trained to be able to run the tests for us and engage with you on other platforms which show that we are very serious about the SABS mark and about the value of the work that we do within our testing laboratories. Before I close, I do wish to thank ACTOM for allowing, they're going to be presenting here. And we haven't seen the presentation. I need to emphasize that, because we wanted an honest interaction and an honest report of a client who's working quite closely with us to make their testing ambitions and to assist them in their product life cycles and development. Why that's important is because it also points to a different way of thinking and looking at how we can actually start collaborations which not only support you but support us as well in our role as third-party conformity assessment providers. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank EE Publishers and the SABS marketing and comms team for the beautiful venue we are in, and for this event which is very well attended. Thank you very much, Chris, and to your team.